Welcome back to another episode of the VIA podcast dedicated to exploring the American West. I'm Michelle Donati.
And I'm Mitty Hicks.
And Mitty, this summer, we have both traveled extensively.
This is true.
But have you traveled by train?
Wow, that's such a funny question. It's like I just got back from Europe and I was on a first class train. And by the way, did not know this was a thing. I'm talking 4-course meals, espresso. It was great. I haven't done a lot here.
Sometimes a great trip is not about the destination, it's how you get there. And our guest today feels that way and also loves to travel by train. Laura Kiniry began her travel writing career as an intern at VIA, which is the magazine that's bringing you this podcast. She's written extensively for several notable travel publications, including the Smithsonian, Oprah, Shondaland, and VIA, including a 2024 story on train travel in the West. We will be posting a link to that article in the podcast show notes.
She's traveled on trains throughout the US, Australia, Southeast Asia, South America, and Europe, and is currently planning a trip aboard Vietnam's Reunification Express. Laura Kiniry, welcome to the VIA podcast.
Thank you so much, Mitty and Michelle. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
You are a world traveler. Where are you right now?
I'm actually at home in San Francisco in the Haight-Ashbury. It's a very rare thing that I'm here. So it's nice to be settled for a bit.
That is such a rare occurrence. I saw your Instagram. You were just in South Africa, right? Botswana?
I was just in Botswana and now I'm here.
Oh my gosh.
And you thought I was busy, Michelle.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So how did you get into rail travel?
It's an interesting thing. As a travel journalist, this is a little strange, but I was very afraid to fly. I wanted to work a summer in Glacier National Park, which is up in northwest Montana. So I thought, what better than to take the train to Glacier and see the country and avoid getting in the sky.
Tell us a little bit about that. Obviously, you're still doing it. So something magical happened on that trip.
So it was really an interesting thing. I met this really lovely woman. She was on her way to visit her sister in Chicago. She's a little bit older, and she was telling me just about her travels and how much she loved the train. And at the time, we were passing the St. Louis Arch, and light is coming on the archway. And it was the most fantastic experience for me. Then I got on the California Zephyr, which is my favorite train. That goes from Chicago to Emeryville, California. You go through Iowa, you see the small towns, and then you go through Nebraska. A lot of that is at night, but you wake up coming into Denver. And I'm a baseball fan. The Denver train station is right next to the Colorado Rockies Stadium.
Yeah.
You're able to get out for a little bit.
Cool.
So cool, right? And then the real magic begins. You're winding your way through the Rockies through a series of tunnels. There's one tunnel called the Moffett Tunnel.
Okay.
It's 6.2 miles long, and it cuts through the Continental Divide. And it's just this really magical experience. And then you come out, you're winding through canyons, you're passing buttes in Utah.
That sounds beautiful.
It's so fantastic. And it's such an amazing way to experience the country. You're not behind the wheel of a car. You're meeting people that you wouldn't otherwise meet. And there's food. So you can get up, you can walk around. I swore at one point, I thought there was a party car on the train because passengers were missing I'm like, where are my fellow passengers?
That's where you'll find Mitty. You'll find Mitty in the party car.
Probably trying to get a story out of one of the travelers. Yes, absolutely.
I could see that.
Michelle, where would you be? The snack car?
The quiet car. Is there a quiet car? Just peace and quiet?
There is not a quiet car.
Okay. My only experience with trains are really commuter trains. So for where I'm coming from is having never traveled by train. What's the biggest difference between traveling by train as a mode of transportation?
I think it's really interesting because when you're traveling by train, you're really in it for the long haul. You know, if you're on a plane for 15 hours, you're kind of sandwiched in there and you're
Mhm.
not really interacting with too many of your passengers, maybe the person next to you. But on the train, you're getting up and you're walking around, you're meeting people, you're hanging out in the observation car and talking to fellow train enthusiasts or maybe people that have never been on the train before. And you're getting all of these stories, or you can find your quiet place. You can go down to the snack car. You can eat whenever you want. It's such a nice thing.
So you talked about the California Zephyr. How many times have you taken this route?
I've taken that route about 9 times.
9 times. Wow. You must love
Crazy.
it.
Wow.
I really do love it. I just think it's such a great way to see the country. It's about 2.5 days, give or take, depending on what delays that you run into. But if you're ready for it, it's a very meditative kind of experience.
Can you think back and tell us the story of the very first time you took this trip? What was it like?
It was such a magical experience. So I traveled by myself. On the Zephyr, I was seated next to a young girl who was on her way to visit her aunt in Reno. She had never been on a train. I had never been on a train. So everything to us, we were pointing out, look at that butte, look at that hoodoo, which are these spirals in Utah that are formed by erosion of millions of years of erosion. And I even remember we were in the dining car. So the dining car is very interesting because it's a European style dining car. You walk in, you're seated with strangers, and I ordered trout. I remember somebody saying to me, "Why would you order trout on a train?"
Why would they sell trout on a train?
That's the real question.
That's
Yes.
right.
But it was amazing. It was a rainbow trout. And I was eating that as the sun is setting behind the buttes in Utah. And I'm watching the colors shift from orange to a bright red. And I still remember that trout. I loved it.
Oh, was it that good?
I think it was good because have you ever done this where you're going hiking somewhere and you have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something? And it's the best peanut butter and
Oh,
jelly sandwich that you've ever had because of the
Mhm.
scenery and because of the experience.
I'm still waiting on you to convince me because 2.5 days uncomfortable does not sound magical yet. Have you convinced anyone to travel on a train with you yet? And how did you fare? And did that person like it as well?
Okay.
Story time.
So I did convince a couple of ex-boyfriends to travel with me. One of them did the entire route from Emeryville to
Wow.
Chicago, and then we continued on to Philadelphia. He absolutely loved it. We had a delay coming into Reno, which kind of set the whole thing off. And the delays kept happening until we got into Denver, which actually meant that the train kind of climbs downward into Denver.
Okay.
And we did that at night. So when the sun was kind of going down, so all the lights of Denver were lit up, and it was the most
Ooh.
beautiful thing I had seen. It wasn't something we would have seen if the train was on time.
Oh, okay.
So that was really great. But then I had another boyfriend
Mhm.
who I took to Denver with me. And he was not the biggest fan of train travel.
Okay.
We did it in coach. I think he would have preferred to do it in a sleeper car. So that makes a big difference. If you get a sleeper car, you have your own space. A lot of times there's shared bathrooms, but you can also get a bathroom for your car. And you have to figure out ways to find your space. You have to find that party car. I know it's there.
That brings up a good point, accommodations. Just because I've never taken a train, can you kind of walk us through those options and what those entail?
Sure. So coach class is obviously it's the most affordable class. It doesn't come with any meals or anything, but you're free to walk through the train. You're free to dine in the dining car at times. You make a reservation. And then it kind of continues. There's a sleeper car that has a bathroom inside it. And then there are family cars as well. And so when you get the sleeper cars, it comes with meals in the dining car. And another bonus, though, is that if you feel uncomfortable eating the European dining way, I don't know if this is 100%, but I believe they'll bring the food to your roomette or your sleeper car and you can eat there.
Is there train etiquette that we should know about? Just asking because of the whole notion that you can eat in a sleeper car versus maybe if I'm traveling via coach.
Yeah, there's some train etiquette. I'm thinking of a time that I took the Coast Starlight up from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and the person next to me did not have very good train etiquette.
Oh,
I went
no.
down to make a phone call downstairs. Is the best place to do that. So you don't do it in your seat, you don't bother other passengers. And I came back up and he had been eating his snacks and they were all over my seat, all over the crumbs and the
No.
mess and everything. And I think the best train etiquette is to keep to your seat, keep nice and neat, and respect your fellow passengers.
It's sort of like any mode of travel. That's right. It's just having good manners.
And it sounds like go to designated spaces.
Yeah, right. It's nice to know that those spaces exist. So you mentioned the Coast Starlight, and this is a different route. Can you walk us through what this route entails, how long it is, and tell us about the first time that you took that journey?
Yes, the Coast Starlight is a beautiful train route. It shows so much of the West Coast because it begins at Union Station, which is the grandest railway station in the West. That's in Los Angeles. And then it starts up through along the Pacific coast. So, one of the things that I really remember is all of the driftwood that was scattered along the beaches, and people were building forts, and you could see stand up borders in the water, and you could see surfers. Then you go inland to past the vineyards, and then you come up into the Bay Area. That's at night. But my favorite moment was that first train ride up to Portland because you see Mount Shasta. And I don't know if either of you have ever seen Mount Shasta.
I have
It
not.
is
Not up close.
it's fabulous. It's so beautiful and it's such a mythical has so many myths swirling around this place. It's at the bottom of the Cascade Mountain Range. And just to see it as the sun is coming up was so spectacular for me. In fact, I wrote a story about it later just based on that experience.
Really?
Yeah.
I am really big on Pacific Coast Highway, but obviously you can get stuck in traffic and there can just be all kind of other outside factors where you may not explore it the way you want to. So am I kind of hearing that on the Coast Starlight that you can experience that and even more, all these beautiful landscapes through the West?
It's like a grand overview of the West. Plus it goes through the biggest cities. It goes through Oakland, San Francisco, Santa Barbara, Portland, into Seattle.
So you're getting all of the landscape. You can go from desert to ocean to mountains. You're getting the entire span of the West Coast, which sounds like it'd be such a great experience. Of all of those sites, what do you remember most from this trip?
Michelle, that's so hard.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
Well, she remembers the trout, right?
True.
Remember the
Okay.
trout.
True.
So, what was
True.
your trout moment?
Your trout moment.
The trout moment, it was very interesting. The trout moment on my initial Coast Starlight trip was pulling into Portland and switching trains, and some friends were waiting for me along the tracks that I didn't know they were going to be there. But they knew that I was taking the train. They were so excited to see me, and they asked me to be in their wedding. As I was switching from one train to, it was so sweet.
So I just got back from Switzerland and the trains there, especially when you want to look at the mountains and the bridges and all these good things. There are good places to look at the beautiful landscapes, like an observation car or an observation deck. Can you talk to us a little bit about that on the Coast Starlight? And how do you get a coveted position? Because I kid you not, people were camping out for the observation cars like
Oh no.
6 hours in advance. It was insane.
That is crazy. Yes, the advice would be, so you're not allowed to sleep in the sightseer cars, is what Amtrak calls their observation cars. Some people try and do it, but you're not allowed. They'll kick you out. And so if you get in there early, a lot of people on the train like to sleep in. They've been tossing and turning, especially if they're in coach. And a lot of people in the sleeper cars are going to stay in their rooms. So that is the time to get in. You go get your coffee downstairs. The sightseer car has the swivel seats upstairs, plus seats that face the windows. And the windows are larger than the windows in the regular rail car. And then there's upper windows as well. So you have this great panoramic view. Get your coffee, You set up in your seat. You put a book there. So if you do have to get up to go to the bathroom, usually you make friends with your seatmate.
That's smart.
So then you're just like, hey, check, watch this for me. But that is the best way to do it. It's a whole different way to see the country.
Mitty brings up a good point because when I think about Europe, I think rail travel sounds like almost an expectation. If you go to Europe, you're probably going to be taking a train somewhere. I don't think that that same association exists here in the United States. I wonder why that is.
I think that because of the delays that are associated with Amtrak, rail travel here in the US has not the best reputation. America's a very big country, and there are a lot of places that are inaccessible by trains. Trains used to go to Yellowstone National Park, for instance, and they don't go there anymore. There's definitely a move to get them back there, but a lot of times you're going to have to take a train and then hop on a bus. Another thing is a lot of places that are desirable, the train pulls into late at night or early in the morning, and it's not a convenient time. So a lot of people might overlook train travel because of that.
If you are late at night and it's 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe is it safe to go into the train station?
I am sort of laughing because you just reminded me of this experience that I had. I had to take a bus from Columbus, Ohio to the train station in Cleveland. It was the middle of the night. I am a young
I'm by that train station.
you know. I was
Yeah.
a 20-something-year-old. I had my guitar with me. And I get into this train station and there are people around, but I was feeling a little uncertain. And a young traveler asked if he could play my guitar. So I, I let him do it. He was playing Simon and Garfunkel's Homeward Bound. It's a very railway station kind of song. But I was in this train station for many hours that night, and I felt completely safe. There's other people around, there's other travelers. It's not the same as being in an airport, but if you have your wits about you and you're paying attention to the people around you, I think it's perfectly fine.
I love the fact that you've done this solo.
Yeah.
You've done it with boyfriends, and it's maybe stood as a relationship test for you.
Yes.
Can you tell us about some other people that you've met on board? It sounds like a bonding experience as you take in these sceneries and the scenery and destinations together.
There are some very interesting people that ride the train. So one night I met a gentleman that was sitting next to me. He was joining the army, and he saw that I was cold. So I had taken a little bit of a nap and I woke up and he had gone downstairs to get his sleeping bag to put over me so that I could stay warm. I just remember these acts of kindness from people that I've met on the train. Another experience that I had, and it was a wonderful experience, when I was going into work at Glacier National Park, I met a man who was traveling with his family, and we started talking, and he was on his way to Chicago or something. But he said, "Oh, you're working in Glacier this summer? I've met someone else that's working in Glacier this summer. Let me introduce you." I think he had met 2 other people. So he introduced me to them, and one of them ended up becoming my roommate for that summer. Yeah. And we are still friends 27 years later. She lives in Uzbekistan with her family.
Oh,
yeah.
that's so fun.
It was so fun because we just connected. One, we were traveling by rail together. We were both from the East Coast. Neither of us had been on the train before. And then when we got up to Many Glacier Hotel where we were working, we just decided that we wanted to be roommates. And that was the beginning of our friendship.
So you did the California Zephyr, the Coast Starlight, and then what?
The Empire Builder.
Empire Builder. It's an interesting name.
Yeah, the Empire Builder is named the Empire Builder after someone who actually built that northern route of the Transcontinental Railroad. And that actual train route was conceived to kind of bring people to the national parks and to get people out to the west. It was the northernmost transcontinental train route in the US when it was opened. And so they created a lot of the national park hotels that you'll find along the way. The train goes from Chicago to Spokane, where it breaks into 2 different routes. one going to Seattle, the other one goes to Portland.
That's actually really intimidating.
It's a choose your own adventure, and it is intimidating because I've taken both of them. And when you take the one from Portland to Spokane, you go through the Columbia River Gorge, which has gushing waterfalls. It's got narrow canyons, and it's just very dense forest. But when you do the upper route that goes into Seattle, you're passing through the Cascades. You travel through a tunnel and you come out the other side, and it's a whole nother landscape. Suddenly you're in the Pacific Northwest. You're going toward Puget Sound, and you're going toward this area where you might see a porpoising dolphin or something. It's
so cool.
It's like such a different landscape from the mountains that you just came from.
Can you tell us, what are we seeing out of the window on the Empire Builder?
One of the best things that you're seeing out of the window in the Empire Builder is when you go into Montana. You travel through Idaho at night, so you don't really see anything, but you wake up in Big Sky Country. And I have to say, in Montana, I understood immediately why it's called Big Sky Country from the train. I mean, these vistas are fantastic. There's sky everywhere. It's so gorgeous. But immediately you're going through, I believe, the town of Libby, Montana, and then you go into Whitefish. Whitefish is the cutest little mountain town. It's a great little escape for people that want to spend a few nights outside of Glacier. But then from Whitefish, you travel along the Flathead River and you go into West Glacier, which is the western corner of Glacier National Park, my favorite place on the planet of all the places I've been because it means so much to me. Then you travel along, you pass over the Continental Divide here, which is fantastic. You get to see an inn called the Sir Isaac Walton Inn, I believe it's called. It was originally built as a dorm for railway workers, but it's a place that a lot of people love to stay outside of Glacier boundaries. And then you get to East Glacier, where the Glacier Park Lodge sits. It's a lodge that's made of old Douglas fir trees, and it's just this gorgeous log cabin almost with this fantastic mountain vista behind it. And actually, you don't see this from the train, but if you get off in West Glacier, which is a great stopping point for going to the Sun Road, which is the only road that goes through Glacier National Park, that is actually the road that is at the very beginning of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Oh.
I know.
Did they tell you that on the PA system? Or did you just do your research and you knew that?
After working a summer in Glacier National Park, you find out a lot of information about the things that are in the park. That's actually how I found that out.
I am curious about the people on Empire Builder. It seems like every route has its own personality. Do we have a different personality for Empire Builder?
Yes, I would say the Empire Builder has the more adventurous, outdoorsy, almost international travelers. It's a lot of people that really want to get out into the mountains. They want to get out into Glacier National Park. They might want to go up to Canada, which is very convenient from the Empire Builder. It's just that was the first time I felt like, here are my people.
Aww.
Train community.
Yes.
Of the routes we've talked about today, I feel like I am more of an Empire Builder.
You think so?
What about you, Mitty?
I think I'm Coast Starlight. I'm a ride or die for that whole scenery. So
Literally
I have to
ride or die for
literally. Like I can't talk. Like I can talk about it all day, every day. Because so I would go with that. I would just have to get to a point in my life where I can give it 2.5 days to do absolutely nothing. How do you prepare to just stay busy or even set the intention to slow it down or slow travel, as many call it?
Okay, well, Amtrak trains, especially their long distance trains, do not have Wi-Fi on them. So that's something that, yes, as a journalist, it's very difficult. But you can get you can use your telephone. You can figure out that you can tether your phone to your computer if you need to get work done. But it is a really great way to disconnect. So when I did my train trip from Austin, Texas to Glacier, I brought a ton of books with me. I brought a blanket. I brought cozy clothes. I brought beef jerky, chips, things, non-perishables that would kind of fill up my stomach and get me between meals. The rail car The dining rail car is delicious, but it's also, you have to pay money for that. So,
Oh, and Laura, Michelle always asks this question. And what did it smell like? I don't know if you want to answer that, but because we're so used to
train
it.
smells. I've never seen a candle that says smells like a train car, but maybe we need one.
Yeah, you do not want the train after 2.5 days. There are a lot of different smells that happen on a train. I think you should maybe bring a little bit of an air freshener if you can think of packing that.
But it sounds like there's something so appealing about slowing down and just being on a train. And so a rail trip is something I hadn't really thought too much about before. But after talking to you and reading your articles, I'm like, there's something to that. There's something there. So I could definitely see how it appeals. It may not be for everyone, but it sounds like a pretty special way to travel.
I really think it is. And I think with train travel, you have to expect the unexpected. And if you're okay with that and you can get used to putting your phone away for a little bit and taking out your book, maybe listening to a podcast, listening to some music, then I think, and even just looking out the window, I mean, that's really the most, you can get lost looking out the window for hours upon hours. Take a nap, wake up, you're in the mountains, take another nap, wake up, you're traveling alongside a river. I mean, it's a moving picture show that I feel like I've been very lucky to experience.
How would you say that train travel has either enriched your travel experience or even just made you maybe a better person for it? Like, how has train travel done that for you?
I think train travel has made me more patient. I think it's opened up areas of the country that I wouldn't have thought of going before. You know, we might pass through a small town, even Spokane, you know, and I think I want to go there. Yeah, I never thought of traveling to that place before, but to be in these situations, to be surrounded by like-minded people that, you know, are looking forward to seeing what the next stop brings and what people are going to get on and what stories they can share with one another. I think it just makes me more relaxed. You get to see the world and you get to make lists of the places that you want to stop the next time you're on the train. You get to interact with people if you like, and you don't have to if you don't. It's such a historic way to travel. The Transcontinental Railroad was built in the late 19th century. It opened up a whole new world to Americans, and the American West is a whole new landscape that so many people hadn't seen. I love that historic connection.
It sounds fulfilling. Maybe after all, you sold me on train travel. Maybe after all.
Mitty, I have to say, I think the Coast Starlight would be perfect for you.
I'm glad I was able to pick my perfect route for my personality.
It is the perfect route for your personality.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Thank you both so much. I really enjoyed being your guest.
Coming up on the VIA podcast, stories from AAA members. I don't know about you, but when it comes to taking a vacation, I get lots of ideas of where to go and what to see. I just don't know how to plan it all. Like, I know I want to take a transatlantic cruise one day, but then I Google it and it's just overload. That's why I turn to the experts at AAA Travel, where all vacation planning services are included as part of my membership. Members get great rates on their hotel and rental car, AAA's best price guarantee on cruise packages, and even exclusive extras reserved just for members. You can learn more by visiting AAA.com and visiting the AAA travel section.
Mitty, Laura had some great stories to share about rail travel, and I bet our members have some interesting things to share too.
Just another thing to put on our to-do list.
Yes. We heard from AAA member William Huff from California. He writes, the Verde Canyon Railroad travels through an otherwise inaccessible route along Arizona's Verde River between Clarkdale and Perkinsville. The route features towering red rock pinnacles, ancient indigenous ruins, several bridges, and a man-made tunnel carved through solid rock. If you're lucky, you might get to see some birds of prey.
I don't know about you, Michelle, but I mean, it just really hones in on the point that if you go on these adventures by a train, you will really see some cool things off the side of maybe not the road, maybe the train tracks.
Off the side of the rail.
Yes.
I've had several friends take the Verde Canyon Railroad, and they've all said such incredible things. I know they have sunset rides. You can go and see the sunset. And I just can only imagine seeing that happen with the backdrop of the Red Rocks and all of these other things that William shared. So especially since this one is in my backyard, I'm going to be adding it to my travel to-do list.
Well, just bring your book because apparently you won't take your wife or your kids. So have your book ready in the observation cart so that, and then you'll have your seat when the sun sets.
Perfect.
I'm going to get you in trouble.
Love your comments, questions, and especially your stories about travel in the West. Send us an email at viamail@viamagazine.com. Again, that email is viamail@viamagazine.com. The Via Podcast is hosted by Mitty Hicks and Michelle Donati. That's me.
Produced by Whitney Fanoof, editor-in-chief of Via, Katie Henry, managing editor of Via, and editorial consultant April Kilcrease, alongside Dave Beasing and Jason Jackson of Sound That Brands.
Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Via Podcast. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Discover more places to travel in the West at AAA.com/Via. Via Magazine is published by AAA Mountain West Group.
The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of AAA Mountain West Group or its personnel.